Secretary Carson, HUD just recently did a study with the Urban Institute looking at the voucher program from HUD and the denial rate with it. Can you just talk about this study and what you found from it?
Yeah, well, we were quite interested in why there was a denial rate. You know, people wait on these lists for years sometimes, hoping to get a voucher, and they think their life is great. They finally get one, then they can't find anybody to take it. And this is particularly true in some of the high opportunity areas. So we really wanted to see, you know, what was behind it. You know, we all have our theories about, you know, what it is, but we wanted to find out for sure, because the preliminary study with the Urban Institute that was done in 5 different cities, you know, D.C. being one of them, Philadelphia, Newark, Fort Worth, and Los Angeles. And we found that, for instance, in Los Angeles and Fort Worth, more than 70% of the landlords would not accept the vouchers. So what we've recently completed is a national listening tour in a number of cities on both coasts, you know, Philadelphia and Atlanta on the East Coast, Los Angeles and Salem on the West Coast, Salt Lake City, Dallas in the middle, to find out from them specifically what the things were. And we're in the process, our task force, of, you know, analyzing all that data. But it's fascinating. For instance, in San Diego, I was talking to the mayor there a few weeks ago. He said the thing that really resulted in a diminution of resistance to the vouchers was the city guaranteed that any apartment that was damaged by a voucher holder would be repaired by the city. And the resistance melted. In other cases, you know, it's the paperwork, it's the inspections, it's all kinds of different things. So we're going to look at them. Obviously, we're not going to compromise the safety of the clients, but at the same time, we want to be logical and we want to be reasonable, and we need to recognize that with the affordable housing crisis being what it is, we need to remove every barrier that we possibly can.
And what would you say the crisis is? I mean, how many people are displaced at the moment that would be eligible?
Well, we are able to provide housing for approximately 1 out of 4 who are in need. So you can see it's quite substantial.
And how do you think, so we've talked about this several times in regards to different policies, but one thing you do is get out there and talk to people on the ground who are actually affected by what HUD does. And in this case, letting public help shape policy. So how will what you've learned now implement to try to change that statistic from 1 in 4? What is the next step?
Well, removing the barriers. Removing the obstacles, I think that will help tremendously. You know, the mayor in San Diego told me that, you know, they went from terrible resistance to only 4 out of 1,000 resisting. So, I mean, it can be pretty dramatic. And then there are obviously, you know, some of the things we've talked about in the past that we're doing to increase the supply of affordable housing. You know, looking at some innovative ways that we can perhaps allow elderly people to age in place and use part of their house to alleviate some of the housing issues and increase their income at the same time. So, you know, there's a lot of innovation and innovative thinking going on about this right now.
That's really interesting. Now, in looking at other innovation, we're talking a lot this week about the opioid crisis. In fact, I saw you at the White House on Wednesday for the event, the signing, and you're part of the task force for the president. And HUD has a lot to do with these recovery efforts.
Oh, no question.
Can you just talk about what you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, we have a big homelessness problem. And our Continuum of Care homelessness assistance program puts in over $2 billion a year. A quarter of that is directed at people with substance abuse problems. So it's a big portion of what we do. And a lot of people, you know, who are losing their home, on the edge of losing their home, don't have a home. in many cases are in significant despair, emotional despair. What does that do? That makes you very vulnerable to opioids. So, you know, there is a significant nexus right there, something that we're extremely concerned about. And so we will continue to devote significant effort to that. This administration, the president, has recognized that, you know, if our country is crippled and so many of our workforce are impaired, it hurts us as a nation. And if you go and you talk to CEOs of manufacturing companies, many of them will tell you they have a hard time finding enough people who can pass the drug screen.
And that's something we saw, I mean, the business sector coming together to try to combat that problem on Wednesday with the president. And it seems to be a whole approach. You get them stabilized in a good living situation and then get them a job that they feel comfortable with. And you actually told me something just before we started this interview. Interesting, you were at a center in Nashville on Thursday where they're teaching some opioid recovering addicts to do dialysis. Can you? I just thought that was amazing.
Well, you know, they assist, you know, the people who are getting housing assistance in becoming self-sufficient. And one of the ways to do that is looking at what are the needs in the area. There were a lot of people on dialysis, and they didn't necessarily have enough technicians. And they said, wow, let's just marry these two needs and the supply of people that we have and fix the problem. And that's working. You know, not only for that, but, you know, you look at our Section 3 program, which requires that if you're receiving a HUD grant, you provide training or employment or contract opportunities for the low-income people around there. These are the kinds of things that are moving people out of poverty. And that's really what this agency is about. It's not about just putting people under a roof. It's about getting people in the right trajectory and letting them realize the American dream.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful premise. One more thing on your Nashville trip. There was another facility you went to specifically for women.
Yes.
The Next Door facility, is that correct?
Yes.
And you met one woman who had been in the facility and you got a chance to talk with her. How did that move you? How does that affect you as you come back here to D.C. and make policy?
Well, you know, it's important to stay connected with the people that we're serving. And that way when things come up, you know, you're not just theorizing. You can think back to a specific person, a group of people, and how this affected them and impacted them. And that's one of the reasons that I like to go out there and be among the people. But I also like to go out so I can talk to the various administrators and the governors and mayors, the city councils, the state reps, so that they can hear directly from me what we're doing. That way it doesn't have to be reinterpreted through somebody else. That makes a big difference.
Okay, great. And last question. A lot of people, when you're talking about the money, clearly we all understand there's an opioid crisis and that there has to be something done about it. Right. But when you're looking at the cost, you hear these billions of dollars allocated, and there's some people who are fiscally concerned about the deficit as it is. Can you just talk about how actually investing this money pays off, or if it doesn't, or can you just talk about the fiscal contribution to it?
Well, the cost to society of multiple treatments of people who are addicted to opioids is enormous. And so if you look at the initial cost and the cost of completing the treatment program and getting them out of that situation, it's a lot less than the cost of repeated incidences occurring. So, you know, we have to begin to look at the big picture there. And also recognize that, you know, our most precious resource are our people. And, you know, for every person that you can get out of a societal dependent situation who becomes a tax-paying, productive member of society, that strengthens our society.
Great. Well, we appreciate your time as always. And it's wonderful to hear about the things that HUD is doing out there to fight the opioid crisis, as well as the other initiatives and trying to work on some of the kinks that might have been in the program before.
You'll be hearing a lot more over the next year.
Thanks. Thank you, Secretary Carson.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.